Let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Schluter. I'm the President and CEO of Relational Peacebuilding Initiatives, which we normally refer to as simply RPI. I'm a professional economist. I studied economics at Durham University in the UK for my undergraduate degree and Cornell University in the US for my PhD in agricultural economics. I also currently liaise with a number of colleagues at Cambridge University. My special interest is how nations, as well as organizations, stakeholders, and individuals can relate to each other more effectively. This comes about, in our experience, through three things: greater mutual understanding of each other and where they're coming from, mutual respect, and shared goals. So I've studied this question for over 30 years across many economies and across many policy sectors, and published a number of books on these issues, including The Relational Lens, published by Cambridge University Press in 2017. And this understanding lies at the heart of our methodology in RPI. In particular, I've initiated with colleagues high-level peace initiatives in South Africa, Rwanda, Sudan, and Ukraine before starting to think about the Korean Peninsula in 2014. And the Korean Peninsula is now the entire focus of our work. In South Africa, working under the name of NPI, some of the same team that we still have today were able to bring together the leaders of the ANC and the white establishment to find ways forward to resolve key points of difference, such as land ownership, nationalization of mines, and nationalization of banks. With the help of international experts on these subjects, we were able to help prepare the ground for formal talks, which started soon after our involvement with informal talks had ended. 3 years later, in 1994, we also contributed to enabling our director at that time, the well-known Kenyan diplomat Professor Washington Akumu, to bring together Nelson Mandela of the ANC, Gacha Buthelezi of the Zulu Inkatha Freedom Party, and President F.W. de Klerk to ensure a peaceful transition to black majority rule at the last minute. This prevented widespread violence on election day just 3 weeks later in April 1994. In North and South Sudan, we followed a similar path in helping to bring an end to the war in the country. The relationships which developed at our meetings played a key role in bringing about the comprehensive peace agreement between the Sudan People's Liberation Army in the south and the government in the north in Khartoum in 2005. This ended the war, which had lasted on and off for 60 years, and set the date for the first agreed national elections in 2010, the result of which was confirmed by a national referendum in 2011. Now, a few words about RPI as an organization. We're based in Geneva, Switzerland, and our goal is to build not only peace, but also trust between nations or regions which are in conflict. Our aim is not to act as negotiators, but rather to develop innovative ways forward to bring about peace using our wide network of experts in universities, professions, business, and public services. We then aim to facilitate meetings between the parties to agree a way forward which is acceptable to all sides. We're a faith-based organization founded on Christian and Jewish teaching, and we hold in respect those coming from other religious backgrounds and traditions. We've also done research to find acceptable ways forward for parties in conflict with different ideological traditions, such as capitalism and socialism. The center of our diplomacy is Geneva. The center of our research is Cambridge. We're able to respond rapidly to changing situations and can access secure and professional venues in East Asia, Switzerland, and elsewhere as appropriate. We offer hands-on experience from our involvement in peace processes in other parts of the world. In our view, in the Korean Peninsula, as in other places in the world, the process, timing, and content of the peace process has to be informed and led by the primary stakeholders in the situation rather than by any external state or organization. So we seek no public recognition. And as a not-for-profit organization, we seek no financial reward. We only have to cover our costs. Let me set out next what we believe are some of the main underlying issues in the inter-Korea conflict. As we've focused on research across many sectors of public life in both North and South Korea, including their relationship with other countries, we've come to three conclusions which underpin our current proposals. First, the problems of the peninsula can only be resolved if trust is rebuilt between North and South Korea. Any agreement between North Korea and the United States is important, obviously, but is secondary to the central issue of the relationship between the Koreans themselves. Second, we have learnt to respect profoundly the advanced technological achievements and self-belief of the North Korean people, and the economic and entrepreneurial achievements of the South Korean people. It's clear to us that the Koreans themselves are quite capable of sorting out their own future together if they're given the opportunity to do so. Third, a nuclear threat requires both nuclear capability and motivation. Even if a country has the capability to deliver nuclear weapons against another country, if it has no motivation to do so, it does not represent a threat. This may seem obvious, but can easily be overlooked. So moving now to our proposal, in regard to the relationship between North and South Korea, we have concluded that a bilateral free trade agreement could be a transformational way forward for North and South Korea to demonstrate mutual respect and to rebuild relationships of mutual trust and cooperation. It would be concerned with trade, not aid. And I want to emphasize that this trade agreement is, of course, about trade, not aid. It would allow North Korea to modernize its economy and at the same time provide South Korea with a significant new dynamic for economic growth. So both North and South Korea would benefit. This will depend on the US, China, and the UN community of nations being willing to allow the necessary sanction exemptions. Once the features of our proposal for a bilateral free trade agreement are understood, we believe it will become clear to all that this is an achievable and attractive way forward for North and South Korea to overcome the more than 70 years of division of the Korean Peninsula. Note that the Koreans themselves are the only ones who can decide and initiate and implement such a trade agreement. In regard to the relationship between North Korea and the US, we've come to the conclusion that the best approach is to build gradually a relationship of trust between them through mutual cooperation. This would involve US support for the modernization of the North Korean economy step by step over a 7-year period. At the same time, North Korea would need to reciprocate by proposing appropriate confidence-building measures. The aim has to be to allay the fears of both the US and North Korea that they are in danger of imminent attack by the other. They each need to take steps to demonstrate tangibly that they have no intention of attacking the other party. Now to some of the main features of a possible bilateral free trade agreement. More details of the agreement we are suggesting can be found on our website. It would open up one sector of the economy each year, incrementally and cumulatively over 7 years, to allow time for both economies to make the necessary internal adjustments. This would resonate with North Korea Chairman Kim Jong-un, who has repeatedly stated his desire to modernize the whole of the North Korean economy, which must include its rural areas. The trade agreement would be for a specific period of 7 years. This would provide the opportunity for a formal review at that point to see whether both parties wish to continue. It would also give an opportunity for the international community to review the whole sanctions regime in relation to North and South Korea, depending on its progress. We believe this could best start with the agricultural sector, including horticulture, livestock, fisheries and forestry, as it employs over 50% of the labour force in North Korea. The agricultural sector would have maximum multiplier effects to achieve modernization of the overall economy of North Korea. Labour could be released for employment in other sectors where there would be increased demand for consumer goods, construction and other products resulting from growth of agricultural incomes. It would also address North Korea's food insecurity and bring important benefits to the environment. It would be important to facilitate trade by removing health risks associated with the transfer of goods, given the prevalence of the COVID virus in East Asia. So we suggest that products and equipment for the health sector should be included in the first year of this trade agreement. Our suggestion is that the trade agreement could be based on a new currency, which we have described as an inter-Korean won, with a value set at the start by both governments. It would be a digital currency like the SDR. That means it is not tradable outside the peninsula. It would be controlled by the two central banks, which would adjust its value as necessary to avoid any significant trade deficit developing. To increase the long-term bilateral trade potential beyond the initial 7 years, we suggest that the bilateral trade agreement should include a social exchange dimension. That means an exchange of professionals, civil servants and graduate students who would increase mutual understanding and alignment of policy goals and institutions between those in North Korea and those in South Korea. It would also provide the opportunity for North Korea to increase the growth of its economy through having a larger pool of highly trained professionals, while at the same time helping South Korean graduates to get a better understanding of the policies and many positive aspects of life in North Korea. We appreciate that it would need to evolve gradually to allow for internal adjustments on both sides of the border. How then can the international community help to make all this happen? The main contribution required of the international community will be to enable this bilateral trade agreement to go forward by allowing targeted and incremental sectoral sanctions exemptions. So why might the US and other countries on the Security Council and within the wider UN family, why might they support this approach and agree to give these sanctions exemptions? We've identified 5 reasons. First, it is a step-by-step approach over 7 years. So it provides a context for regular dialogue between the original members of the 6-party talks, that is North and South Korea, and the US, China, Russia, and Japan. These states have the closest interest in the peace and prosperity of the peninsula. We would wish to see all of them invited to send senior representatives to meet every 3 or 4 months to review progress. This would provide the opportunity for regular dialogue so that any concerns about the implementation of the agreement could be speedily addressed. Secondly, the DMZ would stay in place. So the UN could provide inspectors at all border points used for this trade to ensure that the terms of the sanctions exemptions are respected. This would ensure that trade was only taking place in regard to goods specified as being within the sector or sectors exempted from sanctions. Third, the use of the new inter-Korean digital currency would make it impossible for North Korea to use the gains from the trade to advance their nuclear weapons program, even if they wished to. This would further allay the fears of US and other countries. Fourth, the trade agreement might open the way for a series of international conferences, such as those we've run in the past in South Africa and Sudan, with contributions from many international subject matter and technical experts. This would help North Korea modernize its agriculture and other sectors of the economy in the most rapid and effective way possible. This might also encourage countries with participating experts to invest into North Korea once they have identified needs which they feel particularly well positioned to address. Fifth, such an agreement would require confidence-building measures to ensure peace and stability in the peninsula over the 7 years of this agreement. It would be up to North and South Korea to decide together what confidence-building measures they could propose to the international community to meet their concerns. They would need to remember that there are two things that the international community fears most. One is the perceived imminent nuclear threat. The second is future hostilities within the peninsula itself, which could spark off a wider regional or even global conflict. Let me make a few final comments in conclusion. We regard this as a historic moment of great opportunity to open the way to constructive dialogue, to rebuild the relationships of trust between North and South Korea, and at the same time to rebuild North Korea's relationship with the US and many other countries in the international community. It seems to us that Chairman Kim Jong-un made clear on October the 10th at the military parade that he wants to walk hand in hand into the future with South Korea. He's also made it clear a number of times to the people of North Korea that he's urgently seeking a way to modernize the whole economy. And we believe President Moon in South Korea remains committed to seeking a way to achieve economic cooperation and regular dialogue with North Korea as soon as possible. Let me say that to miss this historic opportunity would involve, it seems to us, a high degree of risk, given the growing instability in global affairs and the rapidly advancing nuclear capability of North Korea. We will be inviting the international community, and especially the incoming Biden administration, as well as the governments of China, Russia, and Japan, as the countries most immediately affected, to give this proposal their careful consideration. It would be helpful if they were to indicate to both North and South Korea their likely support if both governments should seek together the sanctions exemptions necessary to make this bilateral free trade agreement a reality. Then it would be up to the Koreans themselves to decide if they wish to have a free trade agreement, knowing that if they do, it will start from a position of international interest and provisional endorsement. May I conclude by thanking all of those from around the world who've contributed by providing expertise and financial support to enable us to identify this creative way out of the current impasse. We look forward to your continuing support in the future, especially if both North and South Korea request us to be involved in the implementation, and if the international community endorse this proposal and give it their blessing. May I ask all who hear this presentation to look at our website, which shows the history of our earlier work and provides more information about the bilateral free trade agreement we are suggesting. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with us at the email address shown on the website if you have any specific questions. We will do our best to respond to every email. And if you want to have a conversation with us online, please let us know that as well, and we will explore that further. Our hope is that new ideas and initiatives will help to bring an end to the distrust and misunderstanding which has existed around the Korean Peninsula for so many years. We believe the vision of peace, stability, and human flourishing is the desire of all nations. We are seeking to play some small part in bringing this vision to reality in the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.